I'm Emmy and this is my papa and he keeps a beehive.
Hi. All right. So, hello, little beekeepers. We are going to go into the hive today and see how many frames they've drawn out. There's some various terminology with the bees, and I'll try to do my best to explain as we go along. First thing we're going to do is we're going to smoke them, and then I can talk to you a bit because we want the smoke to take effect. So I'll tell you about the tools we have here. But the first one is the smoker. So I've just taken a little bit of twigs and leaves. Dryer lint works really good. And we're gonna just put a little smoke in their hive. So here's our beehive, and you can actually see some bees are coming in. They zip in really fast here, and we're not seeing a whole lot that are leaving at the moment because it's end of the day, and they're coming back from their foraging. So we're gonna blow some smoke into the entrance here. There's a small front entrance here. And now we're gonna let that sit for a little bit. So we want the smoke to waft up into the hive and for the smoke to take effect. So what the smoke does is it confuses them. They're not able to correctly coordinate their signals and tell each other that there's an intruder coming in. So that's the purpose of the smoke, is essentially to keep us safe as the beekeepers. You can see actually Emmy and I are both pretty close to the hive right now, and the bees aren't going to do anything to us. They don't want to sting us. They want to build honey and build the hive. So we're okay right now. It's only once we open the top that they get a little bit agitated, so we'll keep the smoker close by. Other than that, we only have 3 other tools. We've got the smoker, was the first one. We've got the veil. Some beekeepers keep on a full suit, but we're just going to use the veil, so I'll put the veil on now. And this just keeps the bees off of my face. When the guard bees come out, they will kind of swarm around my face a little bit, and they're not trying to sting me. Well, they might be if they get worried, but this is just going to keep me from swatting them around. So this mostly just makes it so that I can do my work without distraction. I have gloves because I'm going to be moving their frames around, and I'll have bees up and all around my arms. Again, they're probably not going to sting that, but this will keep it this will protect me from those stings. I've actually never been stung yet, so today could be the first. But again, they're really not trying to sting you. And we have what's called a hive tool. So bees build up a fair amount of wax and propolis, and they're going to be sealing the frame all the time. So this is, it's kind of like a crowbar. This is going to help us to break that propolis so we can actually get in. All right, so we've given them a little bit of smoke, not too much, because we don't want to agitate them more than we need. And in general, we don't walk in front of the hive, because you can see the bees whipping in and out of here, and they'll bump into you essentially, and that will potentially confuse them, maybe anger them. All right, so this is called the top cover. We're going to take this off, and there are no bees here yet, so you can see what we're doing. And essentially, it's a hard life for bees. They have to find food, which is for them nectar and pollen, both of which they get from plants. And in the wintertime, those plants obviously aren't blooming, and so we feed them. So if you want to see, I've got some sugar water here. I took a mason jar and just punched some holes in there and turned it upside down. So this, the sugar water just drips right onto them. So you can stay right here. When I remove this, you're going to see the bees underneath here. They're not going to come up, but just to see where it's going. So there you go. You can see it. Actually, there's some bees that are right here on the lid. But once we open up, you'll see that they're coming up here to get this sugar water, essentially. Actually, it could be a cool science experiment. Why doesn't the sugar water drip through these holes when I turn it over? All right, so the bees keep, there are different types of bees. To tell you, fun fact is most of them are girls. So I'll point out which ones are the boys because there aren't very many of them. They're easy to identify. But most of the others are girls, but they have different jobs and they stick to their jobs. So the bees that will come and swarm around me in the beginning, those are the guards. And the guards look a little bit different. If we wanted to, we could put the camera in the front and you could see what the guards look like. But they're just a little fiercer looking. Most of the bees are going to be foragers. We have some bees that are called nurse bees because right now they're building the brood. Essentially, they are working on multiplying, and so they've got baby bees that they have to take care of, and it's the nurses who take care of those bees. But most of them are just going to be foragers. So I said, this is pretty firm. So we're going to use our hive tool to break this open because as we've been leaving them alone, they have continued to use propolis in order to work down the hive. All right, so this is called the inner cover. Whoops. So they have started to build up some honeycomb on the top side. Bees like to keep the honey at the top, and so they have built some comb around that area. We're going to put this to the side for the moment. I'm going to take a quick look here actually first to see if the queen is in here. There's only one queen in the entire hive. There's no reason she would be here because her one job is to lay eggs, and there are no cells for laying eggs up here. But we always have to be careful with the queen because if anything happens to her, that is the end of the hive. So before I put this down somewhere that I would regret, I want to check for the queen. We're going to make a run at it later to see if we can actually find the queen. Oh, sorry, I dropped their hive. That'll kind of anger them a little bit. Not too much. Like I said, they're kind of doing their work. We just shifted them around a little. All right, so these bees that are coming up close to me, these are the guards. So they see me up here and they're a little concerned. So we'll just put a little smoke up in the air and that'll confuse them a little bit more as well. All right, so this is called a Langstroth hive, developed probably a century and a half ago, and it has precise measurements. Langstroth figured out what the measurements are that bees tend to like and replicated the same thing in this hive. So you can see that the frames all have a very specific and equal spacing between them. It's important in order to make the right conditions for the bees that you do that. They have exactly 10 frames in them, and usually you count them. Bees like to build out from the center, and so when you're talking with other beekeepers to know what your bees are doing, you would say something like what you're seeing on the 6th frame or the 5th frame. So this one's going to be called the 5th frame. And this whole part is called a deep, or you could also call this the brood nest because this is where they are making new bees. In here, because they only have one deep right now, they're keeping 3 things. They're keeping brood, which is new bees, they're keeping honey, which they eat, and they're keeping pollen, which they also eat. So we'll look here, and I'll bring this close to the camera, and they won't be fierce. They're just going to stay on here. They are building right now comb to keep honey and pollen. How do I know that? One, the color of the comb. They only use white comb for storing pollen and honey. And right here under here, you can see this yellow and this orange, that's pollen, which looks very different than brood or honey. So I mentioned before that I look very quickly for the queen. No reason she would be here either, because there's no brood, but I'm just looking. And I'm also looking to see just how they're doing with progress, because when they draw out a certain number of frames, I'm going to give them another frame. So right now I'm going to take out probably 2 frames from here, but I otherwise want to keep most of the brood nest together. So as I look at another frame, I'm going to keep it within there. I start on the outside because the queen is most likely going to be on the inside. And I mentioned the queen is very important. There's only one of her, and I don't want anything to happen to her. And so if I started in the middle, I might squish her accidentally. So I start on the outside where, sad to say, if I squish some of the other bees, that's not as dramatic. Okay, so here is a good example of exactly how the bees like to build. So perfect frame, you're going to see on the bottom, you're going to see brood, which is new bees. I'll point out what those are. On the outsides, you'll see pollen. And along the top in a small sliver, you're going to see honey. So this one doesn't have it quite perfectly, but right here, and I'll move them a little bit, we have brood. These are actually new bees that are coming in here. And you can see them in different steps. So it takes different number of days to build a queen, a worker or a drone. Those are the three types of bees. And if we look in right here, we'll give them a little bit of smoke and then they'll come off of this area some. If you look in these open holes, you can see these worm-like looking things. Those are new bees, and they stay in there for a certain amount of days, and then they cap the cells to finish off their growth. So I knew these capped cells are going to be bees eventually as they emerge. And on the outside, I can see some pollen and some honey. So I'm going to take a quick look here to see if I find the queen. If I do find the queen, then I'll bring it over and we can all study and see what the queen looks like. And again, I'm counting my frames, so this is the 9th frame, and they have a long way to go on drawing this out. So I know I'm not going to put a new deep in today. I'm waiting to see if they have 7 frames fully developed out, which they don't yet. So I'm going to put that down gently. I'm going to end up squishing a few bees, but hopefully if I put it down gently, they'll get out of the way. So very similar looking frame. We've got some capped brood, we've got some open brood. Now I'm really just looking for the queen and to see how far they're coming along. So this is my 7th, nope, this is my 8th frame. Well, they might end up having 7 frames drawn out. We'll see in a bit. Don't see the queen yet. Oh, here's a great example. Look at the difference between the yellow and the white. I mentioned in the white frames, that's where they store honey, and in the darker ones is where they store brood. So you can see the difference there. So we're starting to get into the brood nests a little bit more. Still don't see the queen yet. And I mentioned now I'm going to keep this in here. Here is a guard bee on my, oh, I was going to show you that one. They're a little fuzzier, a little bit more, I don't know, compact. They look different, which is kind of fun. Oh, and here's a super full frame. So you can't tell how heavy this is, but there are a lot of bees on here, and a lot of nectar and a lot of honey, and so these get pretty heavy. With 10 frames that are fully drawn out, this could end up weighing up to 100 pounds for one box. When I start off, I get 3 pounds of bees, and at the end of this I'll have a few 100 pounds of bees, honey, pollen, so this is going to be a lot. See these cells that are a little bit more raised here? Those are going to be drones, so those are the boys. So let's show you an example. Let's find a drone. There aren't many of them. Most of the bees that you're seeing are girls. But the big ones are the drones, and that's why they're easy to find. And I'll tell you right now, for anyone else who's looking for the queen, there are a few things that identify the queen for us. One is she has a longer abdomen than anyone else. Probably the easiest way I find to find the queen, and none of them are easy. There are probably at this point about 15,000 bees in here. Oh my gosh, is that the queen? We found her. Nope, sorry, that wasn't the queen. All right, so the bees, only the queen really goes into these cells. She puts her abdomen into the cell in order to lay eggs. She can lay up to 2,000 a day. She's the only one who puts her abdomen in there. But the other bees, some of the nurse bees, will go into a cell and shake around. They're maintaining a very specific humidity and a very specific temperature in here. And so she will sometimes go in, or sorry, some of the other nurses will go in to do this little shake. But otherwise, if we see a larger bee go into a cell, that's going to be the queen. But we're looking for a bee with a longer thorax. She's the only one with an abdomen that is longer than her wings, and she doesn't have any hair on her back. So those usually help you to find them. The other thing is they treat her differently. They don't usually crawl on her. You'll usually see bees sort of circling around her, whereas the rest of the bees, it just seems like a big mass. So we might not find her today, but those are sort of the tricks for how we do find her.
You're at 15 minutes.
Okay. Why don't we stop then?
Okay. Emmy, you want to say anything for the end?